Good afternoon and welcome to the Town of Penfield's Energy and Environmental Conservation Committee, the meeting for April 9th. I am Cynette Cavaliere, the chair, and as is the tradition, I would like to have us introduce the members. We'll go with the members, and I'll go ahead and we'll start with Ari.
Cheremeteff, committee member.
Pat Schichler, committee member.
Katie Rygg, committee member.
Roy Green, committee member.
Matt Prinzing, planning staff liaison.
Sarah Waterman, engineering staff liaison, and we'll go over to John Getz next.
John Getz, council member liaison.
Thank you. First order of business is the review and approval of minutes from the March 12th meeting. Can I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any corrections or clarifications that need to be made? Okay, call the question.
Cheremeteff,
Aye.
Schichler,
Aye.
Cavaliere,
Aye.
Rygg,
Aye.
Green.
Aye.
Okay, and at this point, I believe we have a guest speaker.
Yep. So at this point, we'll be having a presentation by Tom Robinson. He's to my left, from Colliers Engineering. He is representing them as our consultant for our climate action plan. So we'll go through the presentation, then there's a question and answer portion at the end. So when you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. My name's Tom Robinson. I am a landscape architect and project manager, so that gives me a certain lens I look at climate action through. But really happy to be here. I'm also a Penfield resident, so I'm very much on board with all the good things that the town is trying to do. And we will talk a little bit, we'll talk about our climate action plan, but also how it overlaps with some of the other town initiatives that are happening right now. And, oh, look at that. Okay, everything works perfectly. Today, I really want to introduce the Climate Action Plan, which I know this committee is very knowledgeable and up to date on, but I can tell you sort of what the town's ambitions are and where we are in the process right now. So we'll talk a little bit about the project purpose and some of the New York State climate goals we're trying to align with. We'll have an overview of the process and the outcomes we are hoping for. We'll talk a little bit about what's going on right now, what the next steps are, and then, yes, we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers and discussion. So first of all, this is phase one of a two-part process for the Climate Action Plan. So phase one is looking at town operations and facilities. Phase two will be a community-wide climate action planning process. So this is really kind of the baseline. The guts of this effort are really data collection, setting goals, and looking at how we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions through town operations and facilities. We will talk a little bit about the two sides of the climate action coin, which are climate mitigation and climate adaptation, and how those two relate. We're trying to create short-term and long-term goals, actions, and policies that are both innovative but achievable for the town. We do have a community engagement process kind of built into this phase one, and of course that will continue into phase two. We're looking at some of the New York State programs and goals, but not necessarily committing to certification through those programs at this point. We're gathering the data, doing our homework, and kind of setting it up so the town is enabled to go after some of these certifications if they choose to in the future. And we can talk a little bit more about that. And this slide I probably don't need for this committee, what our greenhouse gas is, but interestingly enough, the first committee was Trails, and they asked that question. So it is good to recognize that greenhouse gases that we're looking at, although we're trying to reduce the emissions, they do occur naturally in the atmosphere, and they're absolutely crucial to have in the atmosphere, but in the right amount. So if we don't have enough of them, we're going to have another ice age and have problems with that. If we have too many of them, it acts as a blanket or like a greenhouse roof, and it keeps too much heat down by the surface of the earth, and not enough can evaporate out through space. So it's really all about balance and finding the right balance of natural systems and keeping our atmosphere healthy. So we're very much trying to align with New York State climate action goals. Obviously, we're in New York State. A lot of the funding related to climate change and climate action that comes through the state is contingent on the town achieving certain goals. So some of the things we're looking at are Build Smart New York. We are looking at the DEC's Climate Smart Communities program and what's required there. But again, we're not pursuing that certification at this time. We just want to gather the relevant information and have those pieces in place, as well as NYSERDA's Clean Energy Communities program. So there's a lot of planning out there. There's been a lot of research done in New York State related to climate change, and we're kind of modeling our actions on what those requirements are. So the town of Penfield is really moving forward with various planning initiatives. I know you're very busy. Sometimes it's even hard to get a meeting room scheduled because of everything that's going on. But certainly the most recent update to the comprehensive plan is relevant and has pieces in there that we're paying attention to. The climate action plan is just getting moving now. The active transportation plan is a little bit further along. Those two are obviously related. The transportation sector is a big emitter of greenhouse gas emissions, so we pay special attention to that. But these pieces in the middle where everything kind of comes together, we're trying to be very conscious of. So what we try to do for the town is make sure they get the best bang for their buck and the most return on investment that they're putting into these planning initiatives. We're looking at some of the other communities, some of our neighbors around Monroe County that already have climate action plans or are currently pursuing them. Monroe County did a Part 1 and Part 2 climate action planning process just a couple years back. The Penfield plan is very much modeled and looking at what Monroe County did because it's fairly up to date and was following really as much as we could all the current best practices and guidelines. City of Rochester has an older plan, which is, the update's either started or is about to, so that is sort of in its second chapter. We stay in touch with them. Monroe County, I'll mention that one of the big recommendations that came out of their climate action plan was to hire a sustainability coordinator, which they did. That's Madison Quinn. She's actually already communicating with us and will be part of our project as well. So there's some great crossover there. The town of Brighton, very close neighbor, completed a climate action plan, and the town of Getz is engaged now in their climate adaptation plan. The websites for most of these are still active, so if you're curious about what other communities have done or are doing, just search them and they'll be easy to track down. So we're talking about both adaptation and mitigation. This is kind of the two big buckets of climate action that we try to look at. If we put those together in the future, we'll have a climate resilient community, which means we're just equipped and prepared to deal with impacts from climate change, which can be very subtle. It can be very dramatic, depending what year and what season. But increased heat, increased frequency and intensity of storm events, pretty wild swings in temperature, maybe even more than we usually get in Rochester, are all things that are fairly obvious. But they have outcomes and ramifications for our town, our community, and our physical infrastructure. So adaptation are actions to manage the impacts of climate change, and then mitigations are actions to try to reduce the emissions that are contributing to climate change. And there's certain things that sort of bridge that gap and to fall into both categories. So those elements get special attention from us when we work on climate action planning. So there is an interesting group that was founded by a former RIT professor. His name is John Scholl, which maybe some of you had contact with him over the years. He's been around a long time. But the Eco Restoration Alliance is basically a consortium of international scientists and different sorts of climate specialists that he put together. And they are concerned with what they term carbon tunnel vision. So an overemphasis on the reduction of greenhouse gases, but according to their research, what they say is that's not enough. We need to, yes, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but we also need to try to rebuild the ecological systems that are the natural balancers of our climate. So the ecosystems that actually create the atmosphere, but sustain the balance and keep the climate moderate for life on the planet. So they look towards a balanced approach of reducing emissions, but also ecosystem restoration, which is interesting. And if you want to spend some time on their website, they've got a lot of great videos. So you can, if you have 5 minutes and want to learn more about what they're doing, that's a good short-term effort. But this balance is something that we'll be thinking about a lot as we address these things in Penfield. So I'm giving this presentation to 5 different town committees, I think, and I try to do a couple of special slides for each committee. So you guys are getting this one for the first time, but as we think about town facilities and town operations, the town is also a significant land manager. So they have land, open space resources that are part of this climate equation. So using our AI assistant, this stuff is really quick these days. It used to be a whole bunch of research, but the town manages approximately 1,400 acres of varied parkland and open space. And based on typical information on New York habitats and cover types, that open space probably sequesters somewhere between 1,800 and 2,400 metric tons of carbon annually, which sounds like a big number. It's actually kind of a drop in the bucket, but we feel it should be considered. And this is a resource that the town can think about and kind of weave into their approach to future climate action and climate planning. I grabbed Sherwood Fields because I really love to cross-country ski there. It's about 80 acres. About half of it is meadow and fallow fields. The rest of it is forest and shrub wetlands. So the estimated carbon sequestration just for that one park area is 110 to 150 metric tons of carbon annually. It's also interesting to note that because of the specific ecological communities in the park, there's a lot of extra soil carbon sequestration. So below the surface, we're seeing a lot of that too. So healthy soils and considering the specific soils within different cover types they're contributors to climate adaptation and mitigation that we don't often consider what's below the ground. So there's a lot of emerging research on that, and we will tap into it as appropriate for the Penfield plan. Okay, so here's the steps that we're going through. The key elements of our project scope are to develop the greenhouse gas inventory, which is our baseline. From there, we will work with the town to select reduction goals, again, in a kind of parallel to New York State goals. We're going to study some select case studies and best management practices, so what some other communities, peer communities, have been doing. We'll identify and analyze our actions, and then we're going to prioritize the actions moving forward so that the town has a roadmap to work from with their climate action strategy. So these are just some of the guiding principles, some of the emission sources. I will say the circle on the right is not, that's not all the emission sources. These are more like examples. So we can certainly consider street lighting when the town has control over it. Buildings, our vehicle fleets, our equipment, solid waste, wastewater. And then, as I said, you know, if I was going to add a bullet to this, which I probably will, it may be just sort of general open space and land management. The beauty of that is those natural systems are already doing their thing, so the easiest thing is don't mess them up. So sort of on the conservation side is essentially low-hanging fruit for the land management aspect. Our inventory methodology is to look at the town's operation, identify all the sources. We're in the process or getting going with the process right now of collecting and organizing the data. I should mention our sub-consultant, who is a specialist with this kind of work, is Anchor QEA. So some of their climate people who we've worked with many times will actually do the calculations, working with the town, and then develop some metrics based on the goals that we established. And then we're just getting going with the data collection, so what's on this slide are just examples from the Monroe County plan, because we haven't really gotten data yet, but you want to tell us where we are, Sarah, a little bit?
So at this point, we have the data for our gasoline and diesel usage. We have about half the data for our electricity usage. We're having a little trouble getting some of that for one of the years, but at this point, we're reaching out to our government representative from RG&E to help facilitate that, just so we can get the detailed information we need. We also have reached out to Lena this week to get some answers to a couple questions, just so we can keep moving forward with the or solid waste and materials management section. And really, we don't do anything with pure water, so that's not going to affect us. So we're in the process. Some of that is a little bit slower moving than we hoped, but I think we're still reasonably on the right timeline for our schedule.
We are. We'll get to the schedule in just a second, but we're definitely in the ballpark, and it's completely normal to have some stuff come easier and some stuff you got to dig for a little bit more. But the outcomes of this plan are very much dependent on the quality of data we can put together. So as a team, we're making a strong effort to get that in the door.
And with that, we are documenting where we're getting this data so that when we need to do updates in the future, we have those resources more at hand.
I have a question. So I see the percentages on the right-hand side. I can't see the very top percentage.
Those are Monroe counties, those are just an example.
Oh, I know, but I just
Yeah.
wanted to see the
Oh,
number.
what there was.
And what it
Top
was
one
for.
was-
Building and facilities,
Okay, perfect, thank you.
that's 57%. That is what you mean, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry you got cut off there, Ari.
It's okay.
Yeah, we all are. We have a little,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we see
we have
it.
your
Okay.
face in there instead
There's
of.
a little TV, yes.
Oh, I see, okay. I can see your view over there. My view's great, I see everything. Okay, great. Okay, thanks, Sarah.
Yeah.
So, overview of the schedule and next steps. This is slated to be about a one-year project. If we can bring it a little quicker, we will. But, you know, we just got started a couple months ago, and we're going to try to have the final plan in front of the town by the end of the year is our goal. As I mentioned, we have an internal working group that we meet with regularly, which are our consultants and key town staff.
And Madison.
And Madison, yes, and Madison. We have a larger project advisory committee who we have, I believe, 3 formal meetings with. We'll have 2 public workshops that we'll advertise the heck out of and try to get involvement, recognizing that the public involvement is probably going to come more robust into play with Part 2. But we want to definitely keep people informed with what we're doing with Part 1 and the town operations. So we'll have the first one probably towards the end of June, possibly early July, when we have at least some of the data to talk about. So they'll get an explanation of the project and the goals like we're getting tonight, but we'll have also the beginnings of sort of our data to look at and discuss. Then we'll meet with the public again about the time when we're trying to have a draft report ready so that they can see what it's looking like, but it's still early enough to get feedback from them and work it in, and if we need to change anything or readjust, we will. And then, yeah, fingers crossed, but everything goes well. We'll be done by the end of the year. There is a page on the town website for this project. It's already populated with the early information and the sort of the overview of the planning process. We'll keep that up to date as things come into us. We'll make sure that Sarah and Matt have them, and this webpage will just get updated regularly as we go through the process.
And to get to that webpage, you can go to www.penfieldnewyork.gov/CAP, or you can go to the town website and go to projects of community interest and climate action plan.
Great, thank you.
So, questions, perfect.
Yeah.
So how many years of data are you looking at for the greenhouse gas inventory?
So we are looking for our baseline to be 2019, so we're using that year's data, and then we are also comparing that to 2025, just for what our current comparison is.
So that means our efforts, town's efforts for those last 5 years will count. Perfect.
Yep.
That was one of my questions.
It's not completely clear yet, but we're hoping that the solar field will count in that because it came online later in 2019.
Okay.
So the first full year of usage was 2020.
So I have another question. I know you guys are working on the active transportation plan. How is that going to tie into this, or will it tie into this at all?
It's already tying into it.
It is?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So, I mean, you're aware of the many benefits of active transportation, but one of them is reduction of greenhouse gases. So
Right.
we're definitely looking at both projects. When we have stakeholder or public meetings, we're kind of cross-selling both projects so people understand. There is a methodology that actually comes from, I want to say, Florida State DOT, where we can look at our existing transportation network, and if we have a proposed network with additional active transportation enhancements, we can model what the reduction in greenhouse gases would be. So we've done that for a couple different communities, and that's probably, we haven't talked about that yet, but it's not that difficult to do, and it's all public access software. So yeah, we're trying to actually build the connection as much as we can.
Yeah, good.
Can I follow up on that?
Sure.
It does seem like the active transportation would be perfect for Phase 2. Can you give some examples of how it interacts with Phase 1?
Less so in Phase 1. But one thing we're doing with Phase 1 is use Phase 1 to sort of prep people for Phase 2. Okay. So, yeah, I don't think the town has any bicycles that they use for town operations. Yeah, so the direct connection to the town facilities and operations is not as strong as what we'll get in Phase 2, but we're trying to get it out there and make the connection now because the active transportation plan is happening now.
And realistically, the benefit with that is that at our public workshops, we're able to kind of provide some education to residents on this information.
Right.
And I think that's really how it's going to affect this phase.
I have a question. So I think that active transportation must also have a relationship to housing and the way, housing's offered in communities designed as far as folks being able to get around without a car. And, we don't have full bus system or usage. So to give that up, you would have to be closer to the services that you need as far as the active transportation will Phase 2 or even the transportation plan pull some of that in? Looking at housing in Penfield?
Yes. So the active transportation plan looks at programs and policies, including existing zoning, which kind of, so everything that guides the town's land use and development practices is being looked at as part of that plan, and suggestions are being made for changes to community development guidelines that would make our community more walkable. So I think that's probably what you're getting at. And that's definitely being addressed in the active transportation plan,
Okay.
which in turn would reduce greenhouse
Yes.
gas emissions.
Yes.
Yeah, it's all connected.
So I have a question. I know there's been some talk about some of the state goals maybe getting pushed out a little bit with the CLCPA. If you were to make your recommendations on goals, would it be based on whatever is current at that time, or would it be more of a look back at what the original goals were? And then the other question is, have you considered maybe science-based targets?
What was the last part of it?
Science-based targets?
Assigning space.
No, no,
Science.
science-based
Thank you.
targets.
Thank you. I can answer part of that question.
Go ahead. Targets.
So I don't recall if it was last year or the year before, but the previous town board actually, as part of one of our grant applications, put forth a document that encouraged the town, or that committed the town to move forward with the current goals of the CLCPA. So I would expect, based on that previous document, that the town board would continue in that direction.
Okay.
So I think that answers part of your question.
It does, yeah.
I'm happy for you to answer the other half. Using science-based.
Absolutely. I mean, as much as we can, within the confines of our scope and schedule, everything should be science-based. So we try to look at that, as well as state goals, which I hope they're at least partially science-based, but we recognize there's other things that go into the state making goals. We're using the current goals, but we will also stay up to date if there are proposals for changing them to at least track that. That won't change necessarily what we're trying to align the town with now, but we'll keep an awareness of that, because I think you're right. I think some of them are going to shift.
Okay. My second question is, when you set your Scope 2 emissions, are you doing a location-based or a market-based emissions?
That may be a better question for Lena, and we can reach out and ask that, just because her group, Anchor QEA,
Yeah,
are
ICLEI
really
has
the
a whole setup for that. I
they're
remember
the
that.
experts on the greenhouse gas emissions inventory and how we're doing that analysis.
So that's the inventory, but the goals is more about what I'm thinking of. So would you set it against the location-based or market-based?
So I think she's going to be the one helping with that outline.
Okay.
And you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I will follow up on that and try to get some information from our
that's a good
expert and get it back to you.
Yep. And then I have a third question, sorry.
Well, could you explain that, the
Yeah, what do you-
difference? I don't really understand market-based and location-based.
Oh, it's a greenhouse gas protocol accounting. So you can do location-based, which is you use emission factors based on your location of the utility that you're in, or you use market-based, which is the market impact emission factors, which are slightly different than your location-based impact.
Like how much you're drawing in from,
Wherever you're getting your
The source.
electricity from.
Yeah.
So if you get electricity from the local grid, it might be 90% renewable because it's New York State, but if you're paying for, like, say, 100% renewable, for example, you're going to use that 100% renewable to reduce your emissions.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roy.
Yep. And then the third question I had is on the data quality. That's always an issue whenever you're doing any kind of emissions-based goals. And I'm sure you're writing, you said you're documenting how you're doing it, so standard procedures and those sorts of things. But are you doing any kind of data validation, verification, third-party verification of that data to confirm that it's accurate?
I mean, I guess I don't know if I have a great answer for that question at this point. The data that we have so far is based on our accounting. So like how much gas we're using, how much diesel we're using. For kilowatt hours, it's what our meter reads are in town. The information that I'm less sure of the quality on would be any estimates that we're doing based on the number of housing units and the wastewater, like the nitrogen that's coming from the wastewater and those types of things, just because we don't have a wastewater plant, so we don't have like firm data for that type of thing. Does that answer your question, or do you?
No. So there's always data quality mismatches, right? So if you've got direct utility bills, it makes a lot of sense. You can use the utility bill. You can see that it says kilowatt hours of consumption. There's a delivery charge. There's typically another charge, on your ESCO, whatever it is. That's great. You can collect that data. You can transpose it or put it into a spreadsheet. But what I'm saying is the data quality check would be not just one person looking at someone else going back through and saying, hey, is that correct? Are we off a factor? Do we put a decimal where we shouldn't have put a decimal? That sort of checking.
Like a data validator.
Data
Do you want to be the data validator, Roy?
Possibly, but
I'll help you if you want.
yeah, it's fun. But then there's the other piece, like if you do estimations, right? So it's about, all right, we assume that we have X emission factors based off of this number of units versus, like, all that assumptions need to be documented, and someone should look at that, usually a third party that's not related to what you're doing. Maybe it's your QQQ company that you got. QEA, whatever it is. But looking at that to make sure that your assumptions make sense and that data aligns with those assumptions.
Okay. I think the short answer is, I think it's appropriate for us to take that back and have a discussion on this side. But so far, I don't think we're far enough to have that secondary analysis.
Right, you're early yet.
Yeah,
But this is the time to think about it.
absolutely, and I appreciate you bringing it up.
Yeah, and I will definitely check with Anchor QEA. I mean, internally, they do data quality, but what I want to know from them is they've done so many of these municipal plans, like if they have sort of standard QA, QC data verification processes that they bring into play.
And I can tell you, at least at this point, like, the data that we're having them do, like, input into our spreadsheets, that's something that we're reviewing. So there's at least that. We're confirming that there's not a missing decimal place, those types of things, in just that data at
Yeah.
this point.
I would tell you, I've seen double accounting, I've seen units wrong, I've seen transposition of numbers.
I can tell you that in my process of inputting some of the data, I've gone through it, and then I had to go back through and be like, that number's wrong, and then just go through the spreadsheet again and make sure it's correct. So I understand how that stuff happens.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's important for your baseline specifically because you're setting your goals off that baseline. Doesn't mean you couldn't go back and change it at some point, but the better it is, the less work you have to do later on.
That makes sense. I really do appreciate you bringing it up.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point.
Okay, that was it, sorry. Any question?
Oh, no, my question was for you. You answered.
Are there any further? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. I have one more. So in terms of the public workshops for Phase 1, what types of input are you going to be looking at from the community for the first phase?
That's a good question. Like, we're not there yet, but since it is government operations, a lot of it's informational coming from us to let people know what the town's doing. We'll use the opportunity to sort of gauge some of the interest in climate action planning and strategies and see, kind of see what's pushing people's buttons, what their concerns are. So, we'll use it to have communication regarding Phase 1, but it'll also be sort of the first touch base. So if it comes to Phase 2 and we're still involved, we'll have at least some baseline to plan that community engagement plan.
Okay.
And if
Yeah.
for any reason Colliers isn't the selected contractor in the future, we can still take that data
The
and
town will have
provide
the
it.
information. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
You know what, I mean, if you have any ideas for things to ask the public, you don't have to tell me now, but think about it.
Okay.
If something occurs to you,
Yeah.
we're open.
For
'Cause
sure.
we're not there yet. We haven't sort of thought about that piece yet.
Yeah.
But It's just a couple months out.
Yeah.
Perhaps the mitigation, no, the adaptation piece, where the public is maybe in a better position to identify potential flooding sites. And,
Sure, absolutely.
we know the big ones, right? But maybe they see what's coming and what hasn't been identified.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's clearly part of what Phase 2 would do. It's harder to get sort of specific to town operations and facilities, what the public has to tell us or suggest to us, but they always surprise us. You know, we've never done a public meeting where some things didn't come in, so.
And from previous discussions we've had, it is a good spot to kind of figure out the level of climate education that residents do have and what would be beneficial for us to share with them so that we can continue to educate, increase that knowledge, and ideally have more buy-in for future phases.
And I remember that Monroe County did several surveys, but I suspect that they were more related to Phase 2, and then the,
It was Phase 2 and Phase 3, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that's when you start getting the individual, like, the actual community's input.
Yep.
Like, how far do you travel for work every day in a car? Well, yeah.
I know a lot of that also was still educational based, to kind of make sure that everybody had the same terminology.
Yeah.
The website does list climate smart communities. Is that going to stay there, or will that be?
I mean, so at this point, although this committee did have a recommendation to not pursue that at the time that we reviewed that, that doesn't disallow the town from moving forward with climate smart communities.
Okay.
The previous reasoning for not moving forward at that time was that there was no additional benefit specifically to the town separate from positive publications. The town at that point and currently are still getting climate smart community grants. We are still moving forward with different sustainable environmental conservation initiatives. The biggest effect from being formally part of the program was that we would be waving a flag. Now, with a new administration, maybe that's something that they would be interested in us moving forward with. But either way, the actions for climate smart communities should be considered within this plan.
Yes, it does, it produces a good framework.
Absolutely. And realistically, the town for a decade and more than a decade, have been pursuing that framework. So I don't see why we would stop now.
Right.
Any other questions that we can think of?
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thanks, Tom.
Stay in touch. We welcome any ideas or suggestions moving forward.
And if you have any additional feedback, you go home tonight, you think about it, and you want us to provide that to Tom, to the rest of the people in our working group.
number. No, I'm just kidding. I don't think I do. I'm joking.
We will, staff can share that with them.
I'm joking. I know where he
Don't
works.
text him about it. Even if you're friends with him, let him be. We'll provide any information to him and keep moving forward. And we really appreciate you doing these presentations for the individual committees as well as this one.
So you mentioned 5, and we know you did 1 already.
So it's trails, unless you want to, but
We did trails, watershed, and you guys tonight.
Then
still
there will be
transportation.
transportation is next week on Tuesday. Yep. And Parks and Rec.
That's right.
Advisory.
Yeah.
Yep. So really, it's the 5, I would say, main committees of the town. There are other smaller committees like the community garden, for example, that they won't be presenting at. But staff felt that these 5 were the most applicable for them to present.
And Tom, on behalf of the town, thank you for doing it 5 times. And for the community out there that's listening, everybody is welcome to public hearings so they can hear Tom provide this. It's also obviously being recorded, so it's available for people at will. But if they want to come, I'm sure people would welcome to hear a great presentation.
Yep. And each of his presentations so far have been slightly different, and different questions have come up at each of them. So if you are interested in that, feel free to watch the other ones that are posted on our website, as well as our YouTube.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
And Roy, I'll get back to you on your questions.
Sure, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Tom. Good to see you.
Thanks so much, Tom.
Okay, so we'll go back to our agenda. Thank you very much, Tom, for that update. The next item is the standing report from the Monroe County Environmental Management Council. And once again, for this month, I am putting a pause on that until next month. Our last meeting was a presentation from the RIT Capstone Committee, Capstone Project, related to the Rochester Museum Science Center's stormwater mitigation system. So it was very, very well done, but I'm going to go ahead and wait for the release of the presentation and the notes on that before sending that over to us. However, the next meeting is and I had the notes here, when do we come? April 17th meeting?
I thought it was the 15th.
15th, that could be, yes, 15th meeting, that I am unable to attend. So if somebody is interested in attending that, they go from 4 to 5:30 across town. And if not, then Matt and Sarah will try to get somebody from the town to attend on my behalf.
Sorry, I'm at the AWMA meeting, the joint
Okay,
seminar.
that's true.
Yeah.
I'm going to try, because I would like to go see this one.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll let you know
Would you be able to let us know?
tomorrow.
By tomorrow?
Yeah, I saw the deadline.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, now we are moving into the is there anything else on the Monroe County Environmental Management Council before I move on? Okay.
Oh, I had a question. The capstone presentations, do you know if you're going to get copies of any individual presentation?
I believe we're going to get the copy of the actual presentation that they gave.
Great, cool.
So it was really, yes.
Thanks.
Usually that gets shared with us. It's probably one of my favorite things because it's a different group of kids every year, but a continuing project, so
That's cool.
I like that idea here. Okay, review of required items. First one is town development projects.
There are none at this time.
Okay. Do we have any requests from the town board?
We do not, none at this time.
Okay, any updates on clean energy community actions?
So no new updates, but we did want to pull up a summary of the changes that were presented in the RFI for Pond 4.0. I don't believe it was easily accessible to the general public. So we wanted to be able to share some of that information with this committee, and we can follow up by sending this document at a later date if you would like to individually go through it. The major changes are that there will be 13 new proposed high-impact action items. Those are things that range from community-wide fossil fuel leaf blower regulations to permit a solar or wind project, or PACE financing, training for, well, that was already there, college municipal clean energy partnership. So there's a fair number of additional items. The major one that was removed was climate smart community designation. So that would no longer be included if this is to move forward. They still do have some community campaigns. We would be considered a medium-sized community, and it's unclear because the way it's written in their documentation is that it would include participants rather than purchases. So it's unclear if those are still, to be a participant, you have complete a purchase, or if it means that those are people that attend a community campaign presentation. So the way that they requested the feedback was they provided a survey for us to fill out with each of these action items of if the town is looking to pursue them, and then why or why not. So what I did was in the why or why not, kind of included questions that we had, as well as any additional information that, like, we have concerns for this reason, or we like this action for this reason. some of the actions, like I personally felt like were kind of technically low-hanging fruit, but maybe weren't the most beneficial actions. So like they weren't, in my opinion, high-impact action items in like definition. So like I didn't think they would be very impacting, and that I was a little disappointed about. Even if like it was something that was really, really easily achievable, it just didn't feel very useful. And then some of them I didn't like because it was like, for example, permit an energy storage system. The town can have an energy storage code. We can have, like, there can be an easy, relatively easy permitting process, but the town can't solicit developers to come in and put in a battery storage system on private land. So for the town to achieve that item, it's not something that we can really cause to happen. And I didn't think that was the most beneficial. Separate from that, or separate from the, or away from the like the specifics of the actual actions, they didn't have the most defined language around the grants and how those would be applied or distributed at this point. And Matt, scrolling to it, they did outline a little bit of information about action grants. They would still remain, but they didn't acknowledge what items would cause you to get action grants, how many action grants would be available, or what the price value or the money value is for those action grants. I can tell you previously the town received 3 action grants for community campaigns ranging from $5,000 to $10,000. Moving down to designation grants, the town previously received 1 designation grant for $50,000 as a small community. Right now, you're looking at the designation grants that would be available if this is to move forward. That is 5 per small community size per region. That's 3 per medium community size per region. There were
How many
40
regions?
Big is the region?
There's a lot.
We're in the Finger Lakes region, so that, what did we come up with, 40?
So there's 83 total designated communities in the Finger Lakes, and I think we found that it was 40 that are medium-sized.
And there's 3 grants available for the
So there'd be 3
region.
designation grants. We don't know how many action grants there would be.
And previously, there were different levels of designation grants. So we received a 1-star grant. There were also 2-star and 3-star grants that were previously available. The county received a 3-star grant and a 2-star grant and a 1-star grant previously. The way this is outlined, we would potentially be able to get probably 1, because I would expect in the time frame it takes us to get a further designation, at least 1 or 2 other communities would also get designations before we could get a higher level, if that's an option. So the feedback on that is there's not very much information on the grants that would be available, and it does not appear that there would be much funding available or that would be allocated towards that. With that information, participating in clean energy communities becomes a lot less valuable to municipalities. Yes, there is still the value of completing these different initiatives individually. That's separate from clean energy communities. We get that value whether we are designated or not. The big benefit previously of being part of the clean energy communities was that we were getting grants that we could not possibly get elsewhere. And it was a shiny star. That matters in previous history less to Penfield than getting the grants and doing the initiatives. So that's the type of feedback that was given back. We wanted you to be aware of that, both because it affects you as members of this committee, realistically as residents in Penfield. It was a little bit discouraging going through the documentation, but hopefully they take this feedback. I will tell you separately from that, they did provide the tiniest bit of information that there will be a CEC cohort track moving forward. It was not for analysis, and there was not an RFI out at this time. But that would basically be to bring local governments together to, as it puts, tackle a complex systematic emissions reduction activity. Basically get communities to work together for bigger goals. That may be something like composting. Realistically, that's something that this region is already looking into. I don't think we need this to get there. Maybe, depending how that turns out, it will help us get there, but they really didn't provide much information on it at this time. Does anyone have any questions that I can try
know
to
that
answer?
at the last, when you talked about it last month, one of your concerns was in, I'm going to say grandfathering. That's not, I don't think that's quite the right term,
The
but
look back.
things
Yes,
we've
the
been-
look back period.
yes.
That was also addressed. Basically, we have concerns that the projects completed since the submission portal closed in November of 2024 would not be eligible for submission, as well as projects completed using 3.0 funding, which we have 50,000 that is in the process, and we're looking to break ground later this month on. That would not be allowed to be included as an initiative, as an action. Those are specifically charging stations, which in this iteration would be included if not for that funding.
So if we spend our own money, it would be included, but because we got a grant to do the project.
Yes. Then part of my understanding from one of the people on the working group is that that's because they don't want to encourage towns to hold on to that money. Realistically, we had some specific reasons that wasn't moving forward previously. That's at no fault of the town, but it still wouldn't be included in this iteration. And then lastly, any projects that we continue to move forward with in this time period, like community campaigns, where we've been collecting purchase orders and such, those wouldn't be included. And that was our concern with the look-back period not being there. Yeah.
Okay.
I assume they have, you mentioned one of the reasons why they're not including certain items, like not holding on to money, but I assume they have reasons for why each of these items that they're not including.
I have not been provided that. The only reason I was provided the other information was because I know someone that was on the review committee.
Okay.
And I personally asked them.
Okay.
So it's not like it's provided for everybody to understand.
Right.
And we have not been given the resources to ask those questions at this time,
Okay.
or at least get those answers.
So the survey that you did was March 20th, so there is no next step timeline published at this point?
Not at this time. The anecdotal information is that they're looking to publish the new pond by the end of second quarter this year. There's no guarantee that will happen. Hopefully, they make changes, and worst case, if there's changes made that benefit us, it takes a little longer. But I can't speak to a definitive timeframe.
Okay.
I just want to say that, if the state has limited funds to spread around, I do think it's fair that you kind of start fresh to pull in communities who maybe haven't been doing as much as Penfield has. And that's great. We're going to keep doing the work that we're doing. And, the other communities might not even participate. It's like start participating if there's no chance they can win these grants. And because Penfield already has a leg up on the number of submissions. So I appreciate that effort to bring on new communities.
I was going to say, at the same time, it's concerning because it's almost like they've set the bar higher, so that if you were not started, it would be more daunting for that community to also get into it.
I can't acknowledge that my personal understanding is that funding that used to be there for clean energy communities is less now. And part of that is because of some changes in the federal government. Part of that is because that some money was reallocated toward other initiatives. I cannot formally speak on which initiatives those were pushed toward, but my internal understanding is that some of those were other initiatives that will benefit more, I'd say, at-risk communities,
Okay.
which Penfield is not as much. So,
And that would indeed still be good for the communities in general.
and the environment.
Yes. Okay.
So a little discouraging compared to what we previously were able to do with this program, but hopefully it can still be a beneficial program overall.
Okay.
That's what I have at this time for clean energy communities.
Thank you. That was a very great and thorough review for us. So,
And I would like to see that document. So.
We can send it out. Thank you.
Same, I'd like to see
Oh, yeah.
both.
and thank you for the detail amount of work you put into your responses. We definitely appreciate that. Okay, so that leads us into old business. And our first topic there is the 2026 Arbor Day Celebration.
Yeah, so we've been collecting containers for fostering our red oak and white flowering dogwood plants for that week in between our pickup and the event. We are looking at, because Pat had brought maybe a dozen more gallon-sized containers. So we're pretty good on gallon size. I mean, I wanted to collect more than 100 so that in case some are broken or not in the best condition, then we have some to replace those. But we are still light on the smaller containers for the flowering dogwood. I estimated that we needed like 27 or so more. I know John is going to bring some containers along as well.
What size are those exactly?
So I was looking at, because some of the like yogurt containers that we got were actually pretty wide and, short.
Have you noticed
which
that?
I don't
Instead
think
of
would
them
really
being
work
this, they're now
for.
this.
So I was looking at tall 48 ounce or 1.5 quart to 80 ounce 2.5 quart containers. So that window there was what I was looking for, getting approximately 30 or so more. So if we can keep collecting those, I don't know if, Pat, have you already called the search off on your group?
No, but I didn't have anybody,
Okay.
anybody else putting in. So these are, maybe I can ask, so these might be maybe some of the juice containers that,
I think too is that like the taller juice containers, if they're gallon sized, but then we cut them in half.
Those are too big,
then,
but-
then they're, suddenly a lot smaller than the full size. So, yeah, I mean, we can always repurpose those recycled ones to be smaller, but as long as they're taller, then.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can ask, again, they kind of limit,
Sure.
limit to one ask per.
That's fine. I mean, the other thing,
So I
like,
had put in for the others in yogurt containers, so.
30 of these size containers are going to be a very small cost ultimately if we need to buy them. So not a big deal if we can't find the recycled materials for them. But yeah, if anyone has some of these containers laying around, that's kind of what we're looking for.
Okay.
And please let us know sooner than later so that we don't purchase them if we already have them.
Right.
Yeah, I do, and I have a couple, meaning 2, that I've set aside along with milkweed seeds.
I know, I was
Neither
just
made
thinking
them here
myself.
today, but
Okay.
That I might
yeah,
have
it's like, but that's.
a
And
couple,
we're
but,
around during business hours if anyone wants to drop off. Even
Yep.
if you just show up and we're at lunch, someone will help you.
Yeah, somebody, as long as you let somebody in the planning office know that you're here to drop them off, we'll put them in it's a staff-only area with a closet that we've been
Okay.
stashing them in. But yeah, Katie, when do you think you'd want to take these containers?
As late as possible.
As late as possible. Okay. I was going to, offer tonight, but, that's
So why
totally fine
don't-
if you can't take them now.
Why don't
Um,
we plan to bring them with the truck when we get the trees? Does that work?
Is that
Do you need
too
them
much all
early?
at once? Because you're
Wait,
also
I thought I was
picking
getting the
up-
trees, right?
You asked if we could take the truck and go together so we can get compost as well.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, that's a great idea.
I'm glad we had
All
it.
Let's do that.
We're part of that. So maybe we can do it, would it be acceptable to do it then, or do you need them
Yeah.
sooner than that? Okay.
That's good. Thank you.
And we'll look to get the soil prior to that and bring it at the same time.
Great.
Yeah, so Katie had requested getting 2 bags of potting soil, which, each bag was going to be approximately $37. So we have that in our budget. Won't be an issue to get those, and we'll place that order through the town. And your estimates looked right. You had also asked for 5-gallon buckets. I had looked at it
Just to
as
borrow.
needing.
That's a borrow.
Yeah, just to fill up the compost at
Right.
Eco Park. Yeah.
So, DPW probably has a ton of 5-gallon.
I mean, if
we
we'll
can
have
talk
the
to
pots,
DPW.
we can just fill up a bunch of the gallon buckets,
If we need to, we can do that.
Yeah, I had given you some buckets that were, or some pots that were really large, I think, in that grouping.
Yeah.
I think
'Cause-
I've got slightly larger than 4-gallon, 5-gallon buckets that we could use if we need to as well. Like personally, that we won't need at that time. So.
Based on your estimates, I was thinking, because you looked at having half a liter of compost per oak plant planted, and then I was thinking like 2 cups worth of compost for the dogwood. So that comes out to be like 19 and a half or 20 gallons of, so you'd need 4 or 5-gallon buckets.
Great, thank you for running that.
All right. But yeah, so sounds like we'll work that out, but it won't be a trouble to get 5-gallon buckets. The yard sign order has been placed. I should be picking them up tomorrow, and I want to put them out, mid to early next week, so then they're out for 2 full weekends leading up to the event. And then,
I can say the town has already started advertising on our social media and on the website.
yeah.
For the event.
So the website's been updated to have the planting guides for each plant. So this is the one for the red oak, and we'll have paper copies of these at each page, or at the table on Arbor Day, with planting, soil, watering, fertilizing, pruning information for each plant. Here's the one for white flowering dogwood.
Can you scroll to the second page?
Oh, yes.
Does
yes.
any of that change because they'll been in pots for a couple weeks?
I think ultimately, this is kind of taking your seedling and.
It's basically preventing the roots from not being planted properly. So I think we may still want to include this in case for any reason it's removed from the soil and they're not just tipping it, keeping a root ball and planting it. But I think ideally when we're planting them in the soil, we can at least, if there's any, I forgot the name of the roots.
Taproots?
If there's any tap roots, we can remove those and plant them properly in the pots, so that would at least help residents not have to have that. And if you're unsure what a taproot is, we can discuss that.
You may not have to if your pot's big enough.
Well, so last year you did this with the school, right? So what tips did you give last year for planting? Or do you just kind of recommend them to whenever, get it in the ground as soon as possible, or foster them for a little while longer? Or?
I don't ask me for
okay.
those recommendations. I'm getting a greener thumb, but no, I'm not.
Well, but you fostered them and then gave them out?
Yeah, just for a couple weeks. I don't know what happened after that. I mean, I
Oh, okay.
planted my own eventually, months later, and they were fine. So
Okay.
I just keep my fingers crossed.
Well, even
idea,
anecdotal information is,
Okay.
helpful, I would think, for most residents, just an understanding of what has worked in the past for this fostering effort. And, if you can, leave it in the pot for a while longer and, then plant it in the ground.
I don't know.
But yeah.
Does that help?
I mean, we can also ask.
I don't ask me, mine died, so.
We can ask like the individuals at the county when we pick them up if they have any other tips besides what's in this provided form.
Sounds good.
Can I ask, of the people here that previously got plants from these seedlings, like from these giveaways, do you
How
still
did-
have them?
How did we do?
Yeah,
Okay, because I
Oh,
still
nice.
have all of mine,
they all lived.
which is 4.
Well, last year was the first year I got, and so I
Okay.
got one, and it did not survive.
Okay,
So-
I didn't get any last year.
Did you water it?
Yeah. It
Sorry,
was
I'm sorry.
outside, too. I mean, it was,
I think
You still need to water it outside.
no, I know.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it was in a garden space where I was watering, but
Yeah. Oh.
I think the time I got trees from years ago, they died, and the bushes, 2 years ago, when Roy and I worked on it, one survived and one died. They looked like it was doing good, and then it died.
I mean, if
So,
you got 50% when the normal survival rate is 1 in 10, like,
okay.
you did something right.
Well, but those were the bushes, the shrubs
Yeah.
versus trees. I think trees have a higher mortality rate.
Not at this size.
Not at this size.
Yeah, the bigger trees,
Do
that's
we
why.
know,
Yeah.
does the recommendation,
Oh,
I
I
haven't
don't know
opened
then.
it, does it state like what type of soil it's got to go in? It does?
Yeah,
Okay.
if you go back, it'll tell you right
Oh, there it is,
soil.
okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I feel like we're giving a very bad impression of our group. We cannot grow trees. I do not have a green thumb despite my environmental bent.
can
I have other strengths. I mean, you have successful gardens in your yard, I know for a fact, so you
Yeah.
have some green thumb.
So no one's checking the pH of the soil, they're just taking
Yeah.
it home and sticking it in.
Right.
I mean, realistically, probably no one is checking the type of soil they have either.
Correct.
And it can vary vastly, like, I live down the street from my parents and their soil is different than mine.
Yeah.
But it's
That is a
important to think
Penfield
about.
problem.
Oh, I don't even live in
That's-
Penfield.
We have,
I'm not getting these trees because of where we live. I know they won't survive. It's
Right.
not the right soil.
Well, and hopefully people do consider of, will my backyard sustain another tree when they're getting them?
the dogwood will do fine in my soil, but the red oak probably won't, but I'll still get one. I give a spot, I'll try.
So the other thing the comment that we got from last meeting was, trying to consolidate, the QR codes into just one. So, I mean, we have the plant guide information, but we also included links to all of the tabling groups that are currently on the EV website.
Nice.
And so you've got, I guess the pollinator pathway isn't on the EV website, but just any programs from the town or tabling group there. So then, if there's any information at our table, they should just go to this Arbor Day website and find
Okay.
anything they may need. So we haven't gotten any word from the Genesee Finger Lakes chapter of Air and Waste Management Association if we got grant funds for the pollinator education display sign.
I think that was supposed to come out at most a couple weeks before
Okay.
Earth Day, right? So,
Then I'm not sure. But yeah, we'll continue to monitor that. We did get quotes for a sign. The sign itself came in within the amount that we asked for in the grant, but like the mount didn't. So we'll talk with DPW and see if there's maybe a different sign configuration that we could do that would be within the grant funds. But
and we
either
do
way,
have
it's-
some separate funding we can use if we need to.
Right, so even if we don't get the grant, we can look at, other options for doing a permanent educational display.
For the community, for the pollinator garden
At the
community center.
right,
For anyone that doesn't recall.
right. That's all I had for Arbor Day. I guess just a roll call real quick. Who will be attending? I know Katie will be there. Roy, will you be there?
Yeah.
John will be there. Pat will be there. Harry?
No,
won't,
we have
right?
baseball.
And Cynette will not, so, okay.
And John will not.
And John, right.
Will not.
Right.
This John or that John?
John Bennett.
will
Okay.
not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's with the same.
Is he
as
still
Penfield.
fostering? Is he helping you foster?
Yeah.
I think so. I haven't heard otherwise.
Okay.
What are the hours again?
So it begins at 10, runs, 12 is, but virtually until we run out of the plants.
But you
And the
wanna-
EV car show
We-
runs until 2 p.m. and all the tabling groups will be there until then.
We request that you arrive close to 9:30, so if there's any additional setup help that we need, we'll have that. And feel free to stay after and visit the tables and look at EVs.
Yeah.
Do you know where it will be set up?
Ideally, the weather will be wonderful, and we will be outside in the parking lot at the library. And
Okay.
if not, we will be in the community room at the community center/library. So same place as it's been. Additionally, and I believe we've discussed this previously, the town will be planting 6 trees at Rothfuss Park, ideally the week prior, if not the week after, just depending on DPW's availability. Those will be red maples and white oaks,
Nice.
3 of each.
Great.
And I think we talked previously, they did put up the Tree City USA signs. One is at Rothfuss by where we've been planting those trees, and one is at Sherwood Fields, where we will also be planting additional trees this year.
And the trees that you're planting, the three
The 6 at
maple and the,
Rothfuss.
are they going to be larger than what
They'll
we're
be
giving away?
6 to 8 feet, 2-inch caliber trees.
Okay.
That's the standard that we
Okay.
generally go forward with because it has the highest survivability, right? And this is one of the signs that Matt is bringing up with the trees that we've planted previous years in the background.
Cool.
Yep.
I love it.
Nice.
Obviously not the best time of year for leaves,
Yeah.
but it looks great, so. And that was put up by the Parks Department,
Nice.
Looks good.
or
Yeah,
Parks
that
staff.
looks great.
Yep.
Okay. So,
And
Betty?
I know Kevin recently did a publication on that as well, since we, this year, got our Tree City USA stuff again.
Okay.
Climate action plan, we discussed that earlier on. Stakeholder meetings taking place this month. Staff are working to collect data for town-controlled heating and cooling, wastewater info, fleet and fuel consumption info, solid waste, solid, green, or organic waste, carbon sequestration, and town purchased and produced energy.
And I have a note that you're going to go to show us the website.
Oh, yes, so, do I already have that? Right, okay, so. Yeah. So under projects of community interest, town, and,
Climate action plan, you passed it, the second one.
munis, okay. Yeah.
It's labeled municipal climate action plan. It is phase 1 climate action plan. Both of those are accurate representations of it. So there's a fair amount of information on this page, including the schedule. If you have questions, please let us know. If you think there's information that would be beneficial to be shared, please let us know.
Where will you said we could see videos of,
The different meetings.
yes.
If you go to the respective web pages,
Committees, yeah.
or sorry, committee web pages, you can see that. I can also request there to be a link on this
So
page. I think we previously.
I'm like
had them.
90% sure Trails Committee isn't a recorded meeting.
Sorry, that one you will not get one. It
Okay.
is not a recorded meeting.
But
The
we
other
could-
meetings are.
So, but the presentation, we have a copy of that. So you
Yeah.
could see the slides, but
Their
that would be it.
presentation really had the least,
Oh,
like, it being the first one, it didn't have as much additions as he added to this one or the watershed one. So I don't, I can check, but I don't think it
there may
has more
be,
slides than.
we can maybe check with the Trails Committee to see if they have minutes. that
Oh, it's okay. I
summarize
just
what
was
the-
looking at this, trying to, under the municipal climate action plan to see
Oh,
if
that's
there
fine.
was any links to And, obviously ours isn't published
So they
yet.
haven't added the videos on this page yet, but I
Right.
can request that to be added.
Oh, okay, that's where they would
So-
be then,
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, they would also be in another location, but this would be the easiest way to get to them.
Right.
Yeah.
So I can request that.
Okay, good. The World Water Day table update.
Yeah, that was an interesting event. Probably not quite our audience, but it was still interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very
I mean,
much
it-
for doing
just to-
that.
So I didn't hear, I heard secondhand, but it was more that our information wasn't quite child or, of the age range that was visiting the museum that day. or-
Yeah, so if you think about it, you're going to the museum, you've got your kids, you're walking through, like, they're pulling you to go to the hurricane machine, into the Tesla coils, and
Right.
like, they are not really interested too much in the topic of what we were presenting. But there were a couple people that were like parents that were, and we did have some conversations with those folks, but yeah. Again, it was people that were not from our town, so it
Sure.
really wasn't quite applicable, but it was still.
So we need to do GIS for kids, and then we'd be all set for
Yeah,
next year.
If we had
interactive.
tchotchkes that were given away that maybe drew some kids in, it might have been more interesting, but yeah.
So as it stands this year, if we were to have the same information provided, would you recommend we do it again?
No.
Okay. So if this committee would like the town to pursue this event in the future, I would request from you as members to come up with some ideas of how we can make it more appropriate for the people that are coming to it. And also, with that, if you would like us to try and do it again.
The caveat to it is that we don't even know if this event will happen again, right? I mean, there weren't that many participants as far as tabling groups. So it may just be a general comment that like a presentation like that is geared towards a very singular demographic. And if we want to have, other generations to be interested in it, maybe we need to have kind of different scales of
When it sounded like they had,
engagement.
Saturday had the Enviroscape, and I don't know if they had that out on Sunday, but I mean, that's usually very family-friendly.
It is.
Because it's a great visual. And
Mhm.
so I think that's probably the nature of, the things that would attract, but you'd almost need to be like, have that ongoing for both days.
Sure.
So there are things, I think there are things, if we'd really thought about that, in all honesty, I didn't even think about that.
I didn't consider it either, so.
There, just to be fair, like, it really wasn't, like, people weren't going there for Water Day.
Right.
They were going there because they were going to the museum, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
That makes
even
sense.
if
I
you.
didn't consider that.
Yeah, even if you were there and you had the right message for the audience and you had the right tchotchkes to give away, I don't think it would have been much engagement, to be quite honest. But
Okay.
I guess I just saw it as like it's a good comment for any event, like our Arbor Day,
Mhm.
ensuring that our information, what we table, has engagement for all ages. So while we have a lot of like pamphlets and information about how to plant things, and I think the planting of the trees is something that kids can engage with and get excited about. Thinking about, I know like in the past, we've had like coloring books that we've handed out that were part of what was
H2O
it?
Hero.
H2O Hero.
Those were magazines.
Magazines, right. Sorry. Just things like that maybe we can consider.
So we don't have anything like that this year then, or?
Currently, we don't.
But at the same time, I believe that there's other tables that
Right,
are
exactly.
kid-friendly and
Right.
not necessarily adult-friendly.
Right.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I
Yeah,
think that,
we're going to have a whole kids zone
Right.
that will
So I don't
entertain
think
kids
it's-
while parents can go.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So for that event, for the Arbor Day, I don't think it's as critical for each
Right.
table to have.
And as far as handouts, or like you say, tchotchkes, the handouts are the trees.
Right.
Sure.
Yes.
Right, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
kids
more
love to take
plastic.
something with them, and it's the tree that they're taking.
Right. We don't want to have like plastic.
Right.
Or even paper, because,
Right.
yeah, here's a tree, that's better.
Sustainable part of it.
Carbon sequestration.
Okay. So I think that's good feedback. Thank you, Roy. Thank you for volunteering to do that. I'm actually excited about the idea that we have a legitimate professional presentation then that we might want to have the ability to roll out somewhere. So we'll kind of pay attention to that. I believe we are at new business.
I'm just going to jump ahead to other new business.
Okay.
Just so we make sure we get that part in. So John had spoken to the town attorney and gotten an update on the public tree donation, or just clarified some information about that. John, were you able to share some of that?
Yes, thank you, Matt. And actually, some very good news. We do, after speaking with our town attorney, individuals are able to donate, individuals or entities are able to donate trees. I'll use, or other tangible goods and/or property. We'll use the Rothfuss Park as an example. That said, all it would take is a proposal by this committee, for example, an individual to come in and say, I'd like to donate X number of trees. And then we just need to work with DPW and parks to make sure that it's in the right proper spaces, and then the town can issue a resolution accepting those gifts. So it's not that challenging. There's a little bit of a process, and when we get to it, I think we can work through some of that, but our town attorney seemed to be saying that it shouldn't be that much of an issue. And so I believe that we could move forward if folks were interested in that type of donation.
So this originally came up because members of this committee were interested in donating a tree or multiple trees to the town. If that is still of interest, maybe members could send an email to us and we can facilitate that.
That's a great, Sarah, thank you. And to Sarah's point before, it's only a recommendation, so to speak, but one of the issues would be making sure that we're able to take trees that are more viable, so that, for example, the 6 to 8 foot height and the caliber size of 2 inch or thereabouts, more is usually better for survivability.
And with that, you may or may not have had this part of the discussion. If they're interested in donating the funds to purchase a
I was gonna
tree and
ask
have
that.
the town plant it, is that viable in the same situation and process?
It is.
Okay.
It is. And then, thank you again, because that's actually more of
It'd be
the way we were
easier.
approaching it, was if you wanted to do a donation, how could we make that happen for folks?
Here, have a tree.
Yeah, I mean, personally,
Well,
I
exactly.
prefer funds donated than a physical tree, because it would make parks much easier, like their job.
Right. We want to make sure it fits the concepts.
And they probably would work with the town to see what type of tree. I mean, they might have a certain type in mind.
But that could also
and
be,
worked out.
It could, yes.
Yeah.
It could be
I was just pointing
asked
out
for.
they could,
Is
we
this going to be
also-
published on our website, on the town's website, that residents can do this?
I don't think we've
Good
gone that
question.
far.
We can bring that up at a work session. I won't be, can't make it for the next one, but maybe for the one after, we could get it in. Because it would be nice to have something in place for people to understand. And to Sarah's point, and Pat, to your point, we don't want people to please just don't drop plants
Yes.
off.
Yes.
Right.
There's
Well,
other
that's what I
great
mean, like the
other great
process.
organizations that can take it. The town just can't do that.
right.
But we can accept if folks are looking to try to set up a gift, there's ways to do that. We definitely would need to collaborate with DPW and parks. So it's
Yes,
not,
and
it's not
we may
it's a
have to
process.
consider with them of what is their capacity to do this. So there may be periods, if there is information on the website, how to do this, that acknowledge the town will not plant trees during this time period, or like that type of thing.
That makes sense.
Just because we also have to do further maintenance to make sure they survive.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say, the idea is the town would then take up the watering, or would
Yeah.
be looking. One last item is that I would wonder if somebody might want some kind of plaque or something on it that was like, they're donating it in memory of, if there's going to be any guidelines or ability to do something like that.
I think we can discuss that. My understanding is that at least previously there was a process for if somebody wanted a plaque
as I know there are some locations in town where that does exist. In fact, outside Town Hall, there is a tree with a plaque with someone's name next to it, or on it. But I think that we would have to determine what we want to put on the website for it and what's.
Right, and while you're bringing things before the town board, I'm sure there would be a recommended size, who's going to pay for it, who's going to put it up, all of that.
I will add this to an upcoming agenda, but we do have to get through the rest of
Okay.
the agenda
Yep.
items.
Oh, 5 minutes, okay.
So, yeah, we just want to cover that quick.
Okay.
So for new business, upcoming events, Good Neighbor Day, we've talked about that in the past. The event is on the town's website under Events and Performances under Good Neighbor Day. You can find that there. The Conservation Tree and Shrub Program Overstock Sale, so that is April 25th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. So those events are actually co-occurring or happening at the same date. And then you have our Arbor Day Celebration and then the EV Car Show, which are both on May 2nd. The Arbor Day Celebration and EV Car Show start at 10 a.m. The tree giveaway as part of the Arbor Day Celebration goes until the trees are all handed out. And then the EV Car Show runs until 2 p.m. And there are all these companies, nonprofit groups, and exhibitors that'll be present and tabling there with plenty of good information about conservation and sustainability efforts in our area. And then we had a few additional events that were brought up by members of the ECC. I'll just run through those really quick. There's this event on April 8th.
No.
And
Or-
23rd.
Oh, sorry, April 23rd. There is a talk by the town historian Kathy Knauer, environmentalism in Penfield at 6:30 p.m. at the Brayman Room in the Penfield Library, where residents can learn about the environmental movement in Penfield, particularly the work of former town supervisor Irene Gossin. And then we have the Climate Solutions Accelerator Summit, Energy Equals the Ability to Do Work, on Friday, April 24th, and Saturday, April 25th. So you can register on that website to save your seat. And then we have...
Is anybody from our group joining? Okay. Cool, thank you.
And then we have a couple of rec programs. So it looks like well, the two rec programs that we wanted to highlight are plant-based eating and recycling right. That is Monday, May 4th from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. That's hosted by Color Penfield Green. And then there is the Earth Day play and celebration for children ages 6 to 12. And that is Tuesday, April 21st from 4:30 to 6 p.m. That's also hosted by Penfield Green. And then there is an event at Holy Spirit Church at 1355 Hatch Road. That's the problem with plastics, and that is April 20th at 7 p.m. Yeah, I believe that's all of the additional events that we wanted to highlight. Pretty popular time of year for Earth Day, Arbor Day events. Does anyone on the committee know of like a good site or resource for like all of these kind of events happening? I've been trying to find something like that we could have on the Arbor Day page that has more of a comprehensive Arbor Day, Earth Day
Or just no
calendar
kids-
for
kids
community events.
Out and about or whatever.
Yeah,
That
rock
one
kids,
used
but-
to do those kind of things, but I don't know if they.
I don't know of any
I
that's
know ours isn't
comprehensive.
done
Yeah.
Yeah.
anything.
Okay. Well, doing
Good
our
idea.
best to get all the information out and
Yes.
let people know about all the sustainability events happening over the next month. So.
Yes.
Yeah, that's all I
Definitely.
had. If there were any other new business
Okay.
items that anyone had to.
I just,
speak
as
about.
Katie mentioned when she came in, it's good to be able to celebrate Earth Month.
Yes.
So it's kind of good to do that. Is there any other business that anybody has?
don't have any.
Announcements, anything? Okay. In that case, our next meeting is May 14th. I will be missing this meeting, so that will, oh, I'd still help with planning, though. I think that will be fine. And other than that, I get to call this meeting, the April 9th meeting of the Energy and Environmental Conservation Committee, adjourned.